Well, hello everyone. If you are new to this channel, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoy all the videos on this channel, and please feel free to like and subscribe. If you are a returning subscriber or a returning visitor, I hope you enjoy this video. Today's video is the second in my series on astronomical objects that you should observe in your journey in astronomy, and why I find these particular objects absolutely fascinating. I'm starting with the solar system and I'm working my way out. I already started with Mercury, and even though it is an extremely difficult planet to observe, it is pretty fascinating in its own retrospect, and it is worth the effort to observe that planet. The next object that I'm going to talk about is the exact opposite of Mercury. It is an extremely easy planet to observe, but just as fascinating. And that planet is Venus. Venus. You've probably already seen it. You might not know that you've seen it. But before I get into that, let me give you a little history about Venus. First of all, Venus is named after the Roman goddess of love / beauty. But Venus has gone by many different names throughout his history. It's been observed by many different cultures throughout its history. And given how bright and prominent it is in the sky, that's very understandable. It has been observed by the Chinese, it has been observed by the Greeks, it has been observed by the Egyptians, it has been observed by the Romans, it has been observed by Africans, Europeans, ancient civilizations. You name the society, you name the culture, it has been observed by, Venus has been observed by that culture. It has been called many different names throughout its history. Sometimes it has two different names because Venus is known as the morning star. Venus is also known as the evening star. And because of that, ancient civilizations have given Venus oftentimes two different names because they didn't know that the object they were looking at was the same object. So the Greeks referred to Venus as Phosphorus in the morning. It has been called Hesperus in the evening. The Romans called Venus Lucifer in the morning. They called it Vesper in the evening. The Chinese gave one name of the great whale. They called it the excellent west one in the evening. Venus has gone by many different names. It has been known in many different cultures. And because of that, that's just one reason it's a very fascinating planet. It just happened that over time, astronomers slowly began to realize that Venus was the same object in the morning and in the evening. And when it appeared in the morning and the evening, just depending on where it was in its orbit around the sun. But what are some physical features that make Venus absolutely fascinating? Well, the reference point as it comes to Venus is to think about Earth. Venus is basically the mirror opposite of Earth. It has a similar size, it has similar mass. Well, not exactly similar. It's oftentimes slightly smaller. So for example, its diameter is only 396 miles less than Earth. But it does have similar mass. It's slightly smaller, but it also has a similar composition. So you take that aspect of like Earth, and then you make everything its opposite. And what do I mean by that? Well, Earth's atmosphere is mostly nitrogen with a little bit of other gases. Most importantly, oxygen, because that's what we need to survive. Venus is the exact opposite. most of its atmosphere is carbon dioxide. You think of, well, here on Earth, it rains water, which gives life. Well, Venus is the exact opposite. It rains not sulfur dioxide. It rains sulfuric acid. Yes, I said that right. It rains a corrosive acid. Whereas you think on Earth, okay, I can walk. I don't have to worry about being on the pressure, or the atmospheric pressure is low on the surface. Venus is the exact opposite. Its surface pressure is basically how it will feel to you if you are 3,000 feet underwater. That is a lot of pressure on you if you are 3,000 feet underwater. That's what it feels like on the surface of Venus. Now, you think Venus is done with being the exact opposite of Earth. Well, its average temperature on the surface is 867 degrees Fahrenheit. Yes, I said that right. 867 degrees Fahrenheit is the average temperature on the surface. It's not a very hospitable place. It's basically a runaway greenhouse effect. But I'm not done talking about how different Venus is from Earth and being its exact opposite. Another way is the exact opposite of Earth. Whereas in that planets or in the solar system tend to rotate counterclockwise, Venus rotates clockwise. What that means is, on Earth, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. On Venus, the sun rises in the west and sets in the east. But because Venus has a runaway greenhouse effect and its atmosphere completely covers the planet, more than likely you cannot see the sun. You will not be able to see the sun rise in the west and sets in the east. Because Venus has a different axis of rotation, it actually causes it to rotate around the sun much slower. And therefore, whereas a lot of the planets have elliptical rotations around the sun, and basically what that means is that in astronomy, most planets or objects that rotate around a star have an elliptical shape. And you have, the reason for that is you have the star, which has its own gravity. The planet or object has its own gravity. The base center, which is in essence the axis of rotation around the two objects, is not, sometimes it's not the center of the star. It might be a little off the center. It might be outside the center of the star. And basically that creates an elliptical rotation around of the smaller object around the larger object. Venus is close to being a complete circle. It's not a true circle, but it's closer to being a circle than the other planets, which in and of itself is pretty fascinating. Now, how can you observe this wonderful planet? This very fascinating. And before I get into that, Venus' physical features or surface features are named after either mythological or historical women. That's another interesting thing about Venus. Now, having said that, here's the important part. How can you observe such a wonderful planet? Well, the interesting thing about Venus is that it's extremely bright. It is the brightest object in the sky, excluding the moon and the sun. That's how bright it is, and you can't miss it. If you look up, oftentimes before sunrise, you'll see an extremely bright star when it's in the morning. If you look up in the sky just before sunset, you may see an extremely bright star. That is Venus. It is not affected by light pollution. You can see it in the city. You can see it in the countryside. You can see it with a low aperture telescope. You can see it with a high aperture telescope. You can see it with binoculars. You can see it with the naked eye. And the reason for that is the its atmosphere completely covers the planet, an extremely thick atmosphere, and it reflects a lot of light, and therefore it's very observable. But when you observe it, you will also see it go through phases, just like the moon, just like Mercury. Because from Earth, as Venus rotates around the sun, it'll go through phases. So there'll be a full moon version of Venus. There's a new moon version of Venus. There's waking gibbous, waning gibbous, waking crescent, waning crescent. Very, very fascinating planet to observe. And that's what happens when you try to look for Venus. And it's extremely easy. It's an extremely easy planet to observe. And that is why Venus is the easiest planet to see in the solar system. So if you are new to astronomy, you either got a telescope, your iPhone, binoculars, and you're like, I'm really trying to find a planet. I just want to look at a planet outside and excluding the moon. Venus is your best bet because it's extremely bright. It's easy to find. You pretty much don't need star maps in order to find it in the sky. It's extremely easy, and therefore, if you see it, you will be fascinated by it because even though it doesn't have similar surface features as Jupiter or the rings of Saturn, it is an extremely fascinating planet. It is basically the opposite of Earth. And having that information, when you look at it, you will be amazed. And that is it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed the brief history, surface features, physical features, how to find it in the sky, what to expect when you look at Venus. And I hope you enjoy observing this wonderful planet. And I will see you again.